Okay, is everybody ready? Thank you all for being here today. This is the DAO's weekly community press conference for September the 20th of 21. As always, we have two main purposes. The first is to go over gun violence that occurred during the prior week and any related topics. And the second is to talk about some initiative in the community or some legal issue or something of importance in relation to criminal justice. Today, we are going to be asking people in the community who have been victims of gun violence, co-victims of gun violence, have survived it or otherwise been traumatized in some way by it, to reach out for support, to reach out to the district attorney's office for support in a number of different ways. We're going to focus on relocation in our discussion. And we're going to do that because it's such an important part of what needs to be done during a gun violence crisis. And it is a situation in which we are, on the one hand, very grateful for what both the state, through funds that are administered by the AG's office, and through the city, through funds that are available thanks to City Council, has done. We're very grateful for that. But it is also the case that there needs to be a larger allocation in the year 2021. And there needs to be a larger allocation in the year 2021 because the need is greater than it has been. I'd like to acknowledge community stakeholders and staff and other media, including Robert Listenby, First Assistant District Attorney, who is playing an important but unusual role today, and I'll explain that in a moment. Chesley Lightsey, who is the chief of the DAO's Homicide and Non-Fatal Shooting Unit, a unit of prosecutors who prosecute these cases. Myra Maxwell, who's the director of the DAO's CARES program, which of course is the Crisis Assistance, Response, and Engagement for Survivors program that provides special services to people who have suffered homicides in their families during the first 45 days and does a few other things as well. We're very honored to have Terry Jenkins here, who is a co-victim of homicide and a recipient of support through the DA's office. And there's one more person who I'd like to have here, but we can't, and that is because that person is in charge of relocation for the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. This is the main thing that person does. And because of the sensitivity of that work, it is extremely important to the people that employee protects, and it's also extremely important to the protection of that employee, that his or her name not be in this record, that his or her or their face not be on the screen. And that's why I said initially Mr. Listenby is playing an unusual role, because in many ways he is standing in for that hardworking individual who does so much on our staff. First of all, let's turn to gun violence. The year to date, we have a total of homicides, and this is through September the 17th of 2021. It's a period from September the 11th through the 17th of 21. Homicides year to date, 384. On the same date last year, it was 330. That is an increase by 16%. Needless to say, it is awful, but it is awful and has to be viewed in context, like all facts. The fact is, about 9 weeks ago, you were looking at an increase over last year that was 36%, and that increase is now at 16%. Last week, it was at 17%. So in general, we see some movement in a better direction, despite how awful it really is. The number of homicides during the week September the 11th through September the 17th was 9. That is only slightly better than the average that we have seen during the pandemic. On average, we've seen 1.5 homicides per day, or 10.5 per week. Last week's total of 9 was only slightly better than that average. We've had some better weeks recently, when we saw 3 instead of 10.5, or 5 instead of 10.5. This is 9, and it is what it is, sadly. 26 non-fatal shootings. If we look to the number of gun or gun violence incidents, we see 193 gun or gun violence incidents with 78 arrests made by law enforcement and 74 cases opened based on the 78 arrests that were made. Over the weekend, on September the 19th, Sunday, at about 11:12 a.m. on the 2000 West block of West Cambria Street in the 39th Police District, an approximately 22-year-old black male was shot multiple times in the face. He was transported to Temple Hospital, where he was later pronounced. No arrest has been made. Anyone with information, please provide it at 215-686-3334. There was also a triple shooting, and I'm speaking of homicide, on Saturday, September the 18th at about 9:15 p.m. on the 2600 block of North 12th Street in the 22nd Police District. Victim number 1 was a black male, about 29, shot multiple times in legs and arms. He was transported to Temple, where he was placed in critical condition. Victim number 2 was a black male, about 30 years of age, shot multiple times throughout the body, transported to Temple, where he was later pronounced. Victim number 3 was a black male, about 23 years old, shot one time in the right arm pit. He was also transported to Temple, where he was pronounced a short time later. Anyone with information about this terrible triple shooting that has taken the lives of 2 people so far, please contact 215-686-3334. And please understand that this district attorney's office, along with the Philadelphia Police Department, is there to make sure that witnesses who come forward are protected. They are protected, even if that means services from this office in addition to help from the PPD, even if that means relocation arranged by this office through funding from the AG or from the city. And with the assistance of the PPD, we are there to make sure witnesses are protected. And we are also there to do an extremely good job at prosecuting these cases, which is exactly what we are doing. For anyone who feels the need for services, we would suggest you contact our CARES team. They responded to 10 families in the last week, 9/11 through 9/17/21, providing advocacy, crisis support, and referral services as needed. And they can be reached at 215-686-8019. And now I'd like to shift and talk a little bit about the DAO's relocation program. I stress a little bit because we didn't actually come here to tell people who might want to harm witnesses or might want to harm members of the family of a victim of gun violence, everything that we do. But I can speak in general terms about what we do, and I will speak in general terms about what we do. As noted earlier, we view it as one of our primary responsibilities, a responsibility to the safety of the public, to the safety of witnesses, to the safety of victims and survivors, but also a responsibility to the integrity of the courts and the ability of the courts to even prosecute people, to put on trials, and to get justice. We view it as one of our primary responsibilities to protect people in need of protection who are in whatever engaged in the court system as the result of a shooting. We generally, at this time, are working off of 2 different pots of money to pay for relocation, which can be very costly, often costing on average something like $30,000, sometimes much more. And the 2 primary pots in 2021 dollars are $1.25 million that are administered by the Attorney General's office for the entire state. Obviously, not all that money should go through this office. There are other needs throughout the state. But a considerable amount of that $1.25 million that is administered by the AG's office with some pretty strict protocols does come through this office. And then there is a second pot, which at this point is about $260,000 that the City Council a few years ago wisely set aside for the purpose of assisting with this kind of situation. I can tell you that in 2020, if we are to look at just one example, out of the $1.25 million that the AG had, $500,000 were used in the City of Philadelphia consistent with the AG's protocols and requirements. Of the city pot, $150,000 were utilized consistent with those standards and guidelines. But the need is greater this year. We have seen referrals up 50%. And by referrals, I mean people coming forward in need of help, in many cases in need of relocation. The need is up 50%. And that is why we find ourselves in September having seen an expenditure under the city funds between July the 1st and August the 30th, just a too-much span, we see $110,000 out of the city's pot of $260 was spent over those 2 months. It is clear that we are going to exhaust the city's funds. And again, we must commend City Council for what it did in setting aside these funds. We must commend City Council for caring that much about its residents and their protection, and we do commend it. And we have not come back year after year to say more, 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 but we are coming here now to say that in this year at this time, additional funds for relocation are needed. How much? It's always hard to predict the future, but it would probably be wise if this year's allocation, rather than being $250,000, was $500,000. That would probably be a good use of the funds, and anything that is not used, of course, would be available for other purposes. I could talk all about the protocols, but I won't. I could talk all about the requirements, but I won't. We are not trying to give a playbook to anyone who might be interested in endangering people who are witnesses, survivors, victims, or co-victims. We don't do that. But I can tell you that we work pretty hard. And the person I would love to have here, whose name I won't give you, who's not here, works pretty much all day, every day, which means nighttime, weekends. It means what it means, given the nature of the work. This time it's my pleasure briefly to introduce Bob Listenby, the first assistant in this office, who will, as much as he can, and once again he has the same limitations I do, say a few words about relocation. And I'd also like to introduce Terry Jenkins after Mr. Listenby. Terry Jenkins will discuss how our office has provided her some support in ways that she is comfortable discussing after the death of her son, who was tragically murdered on July the 24th of 2020. Mr. Listenby, would you come forward first, and then Ms. Jenkins?
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much, District Attorney Krasner. As the DA has indicated, this is an extremely important program, and he's highlighted the fact that our staff work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I frequently receive calls on Friday night, Saturday, Sunday about matters related to people who are being intimidated in the city and county of Philadelphia and folks who want to participate or need some assistance from this program. As the DA has indicated, the witness relocation program has two primary functions: relocate witnesses, including immediate family, without financial loss or reduction in their standard of living, to aid financially in the development of prosecutorial cases against violent offenders and against criminal organizations. The participants have to agree, in general, to testify in cases, and that's a general requirement for the AG's program. Oftentimes, people will reach out to our CARES program. They'll also reach out to our Victim Services program, or reach out to representatives from community engagement, or officers connected with the case, detectives particularly, who may know some of the facts. We encourage folks who find themselves in that situation to reach out to one of those different organizations. A party in an ongoing child custody cases is also eligible. Participants must be a victim or real or potential intimidation or harassment. As the DA has indicated, we're very pleased that the City Council has provided additional funds. We are able to look at victims of homicide and families and others in a more nuanced way with some of the funds that come from the city that does not have the specific requirements that the Attorney General's office has. We would like to make sure that people are aware that we do listen, we do care, and if we can at all respond directly to the concerns that they have, that we will. We know that we have 11 agencies that are supported by our victim services organizations. We have representatives from those victim service organizations reach out to us on a regular basis as well. Folks should know that those victim service organizations also have funds that can be used for similar or the same purposes. So we encourage you to reach out to them as well. Again, thank you very much for any issues or interest or concern you have here. The DA has already outlined that the funds that we receive from the city this year are well, they've been substantially committed so far. We haven't spent all the funds, but a lot of them have been committed. And we recognize that the need this year is up over 50% of what it was last year due to all the gun violence in the city. So we're going to, as the DA has indicated, we're going to follow up and ask for additional funds from City Council to provide support to families and individuals in the city and county of Philadelphia. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Terry Jenkins. I am a co-victim of homicide. I would like to thank the District Attorney's Office for having me here today. My son, Tajon Jenkins, was brutally murdered in the city of Philadelphia on July 24th, 2020. He was only 19 years old. I'm here today to speak on some of the things that everyone else has spoke on, the services that are provided by the District Attorney's Office, the CARES programs. I was a person that received services and took advantage of these services, the help with trauma, the counseling, the relocation portion of it. There are services that the city provide, and they are extremely important. I would like to encourage other families, other co-victims, if they can, to come forward, reach out to the District Attorney Office. Mr. Krasner stated that there has been an increase in referrals, but I'm sure there are still more out there that could be made because everybody unfortunately doesn't come up and ask for resources, but I would like to encourage them to do so. They are important. They are extremely helpful. I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm going to end on that note because I don't want to get choked up, but I would like to thank the District Attorney Office for all that they do for the victims and co-victims of homicides and crime in the city of Philadelphia. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Thank you, Mr. Listenby. We have with us Chesley Lightsey, Chief of the Homicide and Non-Fatal Shooting Unit, in case there are any specific questions about particular shootings or other events. Are there any questions at this time?
So did you request an additional allocation from council in the spring when they were negotiating the budget for this year?
Please understand this money is not our money. This is money that's held by council. So, I guess the short answer is no, we didn't ask council to do it. We did not realize there would be such a spike in the number of referrals. But what we see as of now is a lot of need, and we're able to respond to that need to the extent we have funds. So in light of what is happening, at some point in some way, we would love to see council make a little bit more money available. What happens when it dries up?
Are you able to continue providing those services, or what impact does it have on your ability to?
Well, the short answer is no. If there are no services, if there are no funds that are capable of paying for rent somewhere else or providing relocation, moving people, things of that sort, then we're not able to do that. Certainly there are some things we can do that are free, and I'm not going to get into all of that. But yes, this is a real need. It's not urgent in the sense that there still is money there now. And City Council knows how to move expeditiously when they want to move a little bit of money. So I think that this is all very doable, and I look forward to working with Council to take care of it.
How about diverting some forfeiture money over there instead of the announcements you've been making, giving out grants? Could you move some of that money?
The short answer is no. The forfeiture money, based upon the lawsuit that has been completed and the settlement terms there, but also various statutory changes, it has to go for specific purposes having to do with blight and remediation of potential criminal activity in the neighborhood. This is not specifically in that vein. If we could, I would consider it, but my understanding is that we cannot.
A question about the past case investigation. How's it going, helping to find those guys, and how the video impacts how this investigation is going on?
I'm going to call up Ms. Lightsey.
Hi, good morning. So I think a lot of the organizations reported yesterday there are 2 arrest warrants currently active for 2 individuals. There's actually a 3rd individual currently in custody. An arrest hasn't been approved yet, but that investigation with that individual is ongoing. And there have been a lot of tips called in. The public has been exceptionally responsive in giving information. And So the investigation is going well at this point. So.
Is it, with the tips that are coming in, is that primarily because people know Pat's, they know that neighborhood? Is it the video? Because the video is very descriptive.
You know, it's hard to put the motivation on people who I don't know. I do think the video was of exceptional quality and was obviously quite graphic. I also think it has a lot to do with the people in the community who know Pat Stakes and don't want this to become a place where, you know, murder particularly is happening. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Are you glad with the progress because these people are not from Philadelphia? So in a sense, it could be a lot harder to find out who these people are. So just your thoughts on how this investigation and how quickly it's evolved.
So the assigned detective in this matter is Detective Jim Burns. He has done an exceptional job. He is a seasoned veteran of the police department and specifically of the homicide unit. We are happy with how this investigation is coming together, but that is in no small part due to the number of people from across the city who've seen this video and have called it in, and likely across the nation, but certainly within the city.
So you said there is one person in custody right now?
There's one person in custody, 2 other arrest warrants that are active for 2 other individuals, and we're very hopeful that we'll be able to bring all of the suspects in soon.
And these suspects are from Philadelphia,
I
right?
cannot answer that question as I don't the one person who's currently in custody, I don't know the answer to that, so, okay? I know you had.
Do you know if the two suspects, not the person in custody, are they the ones that, if you know or if you can say, that have trash can lids?
I cannot say. I'm not for certain. I can't say. Okay. Anything else about Pat's Stakes? Okay, step back.
And Larry, I have one question for you. As far as the victims services coordination and program, can you, whatever details you can give to witnesses who may fear that even calling you guys or making sure we're calling the CARES program may endanger them in some way, can you give them some reassurance for how they would be protected? I know you can't get into great detail, but
Sure. No, I can do that. Thank you. So anyone who calls the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office or reaches out through police, and then they bring the need to our attention, or reaches out through a city council person or a clergy person, whoever it may be. I get calls on weekends all the time from people in every one of those categories. Anybody who reaches out will do so secretly, meaning we are not going to tell anybody that there was an effort to get some kind of help or some kind of relocation. Any sort of relocation and protection services are done under the strictest secrecy, so secret, in fact, that we're not even telling you who does it, although someone does it full time in this office. We make absolutely every possible effort to protect people who believe that they are in need of protection. So please do not hesitate to reach out if you feel you are in need of relocation, other sorts of witness protection, or simply need some kind of services as a consequence of the trauma and the difficulty that you are going through. We will protect you as much as anyone possibly can.
and does it go as far as like all cases, would you say, or is it something that's mostly gun related?
These types of requests tend to have to do with the most serious cases. We do not see a whole lot of people calling us because someone has committed a retail theft twice. I think we can all probably figure out why that is, but we do tend to see them in cases involving really serious crime, such as homicides, first-degree felony rapes, things of that sort. We also sometimes see it in relation to domestic violence or familial crime situation of many different types, and I think I even heard Mr. Listenby pointing out that this may be available to people who are going through child custody type proceedings. So sometimes it has to do with relationships that make it a more urgent need. You have a perpetrator who actually knows a lot about where someone lives and how to get in the door and what their phone numbers are and things of that sort. So we tend to see it in those situations. We obviously, though, you know, in that unusual case where a relatively non-serious offense results in people who are engaging in threatening behavior or truly frightening behavior, we don't want any witness to be stopped from coming to court and stopped from feeling safe during the process of prosecution.
I just have one more question about the funding. You mentioned that last year there was a pot of like $250,000
To the best of my knowledge, City Council retains it, and then it becomes available for the next year's budget. You know, when we have need, we would be delighted to spend every dime and more. But when we do not have need, we're not going to waste the funds. We all understand the situation the city is in. I can tell you that this is a year, and maybe it has to do with the length of this period of a spike in gun violence, even though it's getting a little better right now. Maybe it has something to do with the pandemic, or maybe we're just dealing with a situation where people have come to understand that it's available and we're active and we mean it. Maybe that's it, but whatever it is, we have to make our paramount issue the protection of victims, co-victims, survivors, and witnesses for their sake, for the city's sake, but also for the sake of a system that needs them to prosecute cases.
Last question. How long does it typically take to relocate someone?
I think I can answer that. When we get a call about relocation, it can happen instantly. So it may not be the permanent relocation, you know, a new place to live, but it happens immediately, particularly when the threat is the greatest. Our staff in that unit that do relocations, like I said, work all the time. So it can happen on a Saturday morning, a Sunday evening, and it happens very quickly.
Yeah, I would add to that. I agree with that, but I would add to that sometimes some situations are more complicated than others. And obviously, if you're dealing with a situation that involves relocating an entire family where you have very young people involved, it can be a lot more complicated than if it's a more straightforward situation. All right. There being no other questions, thank you all very much. We look forward to seeing you next week.